everyone, this is Amanda Campbell with Chasing Daylight Photography. I hope you enjoy this Photoshop tutorial, and if you have any questions for me, please email me at chasingdaylightphotos@gmail.com. I'm going to be showing you a couple of different methods for getting rid of the pesky flyaways that you get sometimes in your photography. And as with most things in Photoshop, there's a ton of different ways to achieve the effect that you're looking for. So I'm going to cover a few of them and go over why some work and some don't in a variety of situations. So here, one of the first things we can try is the patch tool. If you right click here, you'll see the spot healing brush, patch tool. Choose the patch tool. Make sure that your patch mode is normal instead of content aware, because we want to not be aware of the hair. We don't want to replace the hair with a different hair. So we're using the normal mode. Zooming in closely and outline the hair. Pull it away. That took care of that hair pretty well. So we can do that for every hair, and it's working pretty great. But one thing that happens when you use the patch tool, if you get close to a border between one edge and another, it's gonna blur that edge, and it's pretty obvious here that I used the patch tool or some method to try to get rid of a flyaway. Let's try to cut in closer, pull away. And that worked a little bit better, but we still have the edges here with a slight blurring out. I'll go ahead and try a couple more. There's some blur there. It's not a clean edge and it doesn't look great. It's not perfect. So the patch tool can work for single strands, but once you get really close in here with lots of little strands of hair, you end up with the blurring of the edges. So the patch tool can work, but for this particular situation, I'm going to want to do something slightly different. Another thing that you can do is use the clone stamp tool, and you'll have to use a slightly hard clone stamp and click an area close to similar to a background as what you have around the hairs. This is kind of tough because it's pretty dark around her hair here and pretty light out here, so it's going to be tough to sample an area that's going to match very well. And I'm going to make my brush smaller because we're just going to go around the outside here close to the hair to get rid of the flyaways. And for the purpose of getting rid of the flyaways, it does a great job. But we have to use a harder clone stamp to make sure that the edge where we're painting away looks like it should, where it's sharp instead of blurry. But then you're left with the hard outline that you got using the harder brush. So a way to remedy that is to create a brush with 0% hardness, the clone stamp. Still using the clone stamp at 0% hardness, come out and sample again, and then just blend in the layer here. And that worked pretty well. Continue to blend in that hard boundary that you got. It worked decently well, but for me, I guess probably because I know that I did that, I can still see my paint strokes. And when I zoom out, it looks like a little halo of cloning around her head. So that's not what I want. So I'm actually going to go and undo by pressing Control Alt and Z on the PC. And I'm going to use a completely different method because this to me is much easier. The clone stamp can work and I use it a number of times. And it's time consuming. It takes time to go through and perfect it so that it doesn't look like I clone stamped around her hair. So this is quicker for me. I'm going to choose the quick selection tool and I'm going to select her head. I'm not going to worry about going outside of the main hair area, I'm not going to try to select the strands, I'm just going to the main area that is her head. We'll come down just a little bit, but we don't need to select her whole body. So once we have that, we can go up to Refine Selection, and you can see with it a red background, it's a pretty choppy selection. So I'm going to click Smart Radius. I'm only going to increase it. I try to keep it less than 1 pixel because it takes way too many liberties, the program does, when you allow it more than 1 pixel in most situations if you've got a really focused area that you're trying to select. I'm going to smooth the edges just a bit. I'm not going to feather it because she's very sharp and we don't need any feathering into the background here. But I am going to shift the edge slightly in toward her, maybe a -7. Now I can use this brush tool to paint the areas that are choppy and rough. But I'm going to be very careful not to go and paint over these flyaways because we don't want to include them. Don't get too caught up in how perfect this looks because we're going to go back and refine it again using a quick mask. But this is just going to this is going to help to clear up the choppiness of the selection. This is a tough area right here because she's got quite a few strands that go away from the main body of her hair. So that's going to take a little bit of work outside of this. So we've got a general smooth selection here. Select OK. Now we're going to go to the quick mask mode. That brings back this red background, but it allows me to actually choose the paintbrush and choose white for what I want to reveal. I can make the brush smaller. And I'm also going to bring it up to about 75% hardness. We don't want it 100% hardness because we want a little bit of forgiveness with our painting. Now, because I'm revealing with the white paintbrush what I want to select, and I need to, oh, that was my son. I have the office doors closed and he's kind of impatient for me to get done with this. I'm going to increase the opacity up to 100 and paint over the areas that are hidden with the red. And come up to this area. And I just was sitting here thinking, it's not really doing what I'm asking it to do. And I realized that I have the pen pressure button selected. And if you're working with a Wacom tablet or any kind of tablet where you're using a pen or a stylus to use Photoshop, that little button right there, I always have it selected, or I don't always, but sometimes I have it selected in it and I don't realize it, and it drives me crazy because I'm thinking, why am I using this and it's not applying the effect that I'm asking it to? Because that pressure button, you have to press down really hard to get the full effect of your brush. So now that that's deselected, I'm able to use the white to reveal the parts of her hair that I want to keep. All of this looks good. Now right here it's kind of touchy. It's not looking fabulous, but I'm actually going to keep these longer strands here. They're flyaways, but they make sense because this area leads to them, and if I got rid of them all, it would look like her hair kind of chunks off right there. So I'm going to keep some of them and keep it to about right there. These extras over here can go away. So now we have the general outline of what we want to keep. I'm going to go back and select the black and paint over the areas that I really don't want to keep. The areas that might have gotten selected with the Refine Mask tool. There's a little area of red there. I'm going to go back over, go back to black. And if you want to make that a quicker transition from black to white, you can use the X key to go back and forth without having to come back over and select the color that you want. The main thing here, and I know I said that this is much quicker than the other option. It might not be as quick, but it's much easier to do this than it is to try to clone stamp out an area and then go back and fix how it looks. So this is just, to me, more of a no-brainer, I guess. You're just literally showing Photoshop where you want the hair gone. So now we can exit the quick mask mode, go back up to a selection tool, right click. There's a couple of ways you can do this too. If you right click layer via copy, that's going to put her head on top. So whatever you do to this background layer is not going to affect that part of her hair. So this is basically what we're going to get. We're going to lose the flyaways and just keep her hair. Or I'm going to undo what I just did. From here, you can right click and select inverse. You can use your clone stamp and get rid of those hairs, but you don't have to use the hard clone stamp. You don't have to increase the hardness to outline around her head. You can keep it soft at 0% hardness. Then you can clone stamp around and get rid of those flyaways without having to worry about going back to fix the border between the hard clone stamp tool and the rest of the background. So my favorite way to do it, and what I'm going to show you here, is to right click. I'm going to select inverse again just to get back to the selection of her head. Right click layer via copy, and then I'm going to select the background layer, Control J to duplicate it so that I don't do anything destructive to the very background layer. So I'll be working on background copy using the clone stamp tool, and we get to keep it at 0% hardness because we're not having to worry about the border. We've already created that with this other layer. So I'm going to control and select an area, come over and paint away. I'm going to increase my flow just a bit and paint away these stray hairs. Now you have to make sure if you have a horizon of any kind or any details in the background that you're taking those into consideration while you're clone stamping. So here I'm going to make sure that I have the border of the trees and the grass. I'm going to keep that in mind as I go across this area to get rid of those flyaways. And I'm not going to go down any lower because my selection only included the area that had flyaways. I'm going to do the same thing over here on the other side, keeping it lined up just right. Now, I did keep this extra strand of hair, and now I'm kind of thinking that I don't like it included because the border between that and the background is kind of sharp and choppy. So I'm going to go up here to the layer that I created that just contains her head, and you can see the effect that has. I'm going to add a layer mask. Use the paintbrush in black, 100% opacity. I'm going to increase the hard. Oh, it's already up to 77. I'm going to bring it down to about 40. Need a little bit of hardness because you want to control where this effect is going. And I'm going to get rid of that extra strand that I included because it just doesn't make any sense there. It doesn't look good. Now, that little area here that I was worried about and the reason that I kept that extra strand does look kind of funky. So I'm going to increase the hardness again, probably up to about 73, and just paint away a little bit of that shape so that it flows straight down and it looks normal. So we're left with no flyaways at all, and it wasn't difficult at all. It may have taken just a little bit more time, but it was completely a no-brainer. It was super duper easy. We just select it and then clone around, and we don't have to worry about using the patch tool or using a hard clone stamp to try to trace around her head. It was simple. And so those are the methods that you can use. This is the one that I prefer in most cases. And whatever works for you, but I hope that this helps you in the future when you're dealing with the pesky flyaways from your photo session. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.